in the kind of digital environment might change in 6 months.
So one of the relevant concerns here in terms of the impact of GPT on society is the nature of truth that's relevant to Wolfram Alpha, because computation through symbolic reasoning that's embodied in Wolfram Alpha as the interface, there's a kind of sense that what Wolfram Alpha tells me is true.
Mm-hmm. So we hope.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably analyze that. You could show, you can't prove that it's always going to be true, computational reducibility, but it's going to be more true than not.
Look, the fact is, it will be the correct consequence of the rules you've specified. And insofar as it talks about the real world, that is our job in sort of curating and collecting data to make sure that that data is, quotes, as true as possible. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's always an interesting question. I mean, for us, our operational definition of truth is, somebody says, who's the best actress?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Mm-hmm. But somebody won the Oscar, and that's a definite fact.
Yeah.
And so, that's the kind of thing that we can make computational as a piece of truth. Yeah. If you ask, these things which, a sensor measured this thing, it did it this way. A machine learning system, this particular machine learning system recognized this thing. That's a sort of a definite, a fact, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, there is a good network of those things in the world. It's certainly the case that, particularly when you say, is so-and-so a good person?
Yeah.
That's a hopelessly, we might have a computational language definition of good. I don't think it'd be very interesting because that's a very messy kind of concept, not really amenable to I think as far as we will get with those kinds of things is I want X. There's a kind of meaningful calculus of I want X. And that has various consequences. I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't thought this through properly, but I think, a concept like, is so-and-so a good person? Is that true or not? That's a mess.
That's a mess that's amenable to computation. I think it's a mess when humans try to define what's good, like through legislation. But when humans try to define what's good through literature, through history books, through poetry, it starts being.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that particular thing, it's kind of like, we're going into kind of the ethics of what counts as good, so to speak, and what do we think is right, and so on. And I think that's a thing which, one feature is we don't all agree about that. There's no theorems about kind of there's no theoretical framework that says this is the way that ethics has to be.
Well, first of all, there's stuff we kind of agree on, and there's some empirical backing for what works and what doesn't, from just even the morals and ethics within religious texts. So we seem to mostly agree that murder is bad. There's certain universals that seem to emerge.
I wonder whether murder of an AI is bad.
Well, I tend to think yes, but and I think we're going to have to contend with that question. Oh, and I wonder what AI would say.
Yeah. Well, I think, one of the things with AIs is it's one thing to wipe out that AI that is only, has no owner. You can easily imagine an AI kind of hanging out on the internet without having any particular owner or anything like that. And then you say, well, what harm does it, it's okay to get rid of that AI.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if the AI has 10,000 friends who are humans, and all those 10,000 humans will be incredibly upset that this AI just got exterminated, mm-hmm. It becomes a slightly different, more entangled story. But yeah, no, I think that this question about what do humans agree about, it's, there are certain things that, human laws have tended to consistently agree about. There have been times in history when people have sort of gone away from certain kinds of laws, even ones that we would now say, how could you possibly have not done it that way? That just doesn't seem right at all. But I think, this question of what, I don't think one can say beyond saying, if you have a set of rules that will cause the species to go extinct, that's probably, you could say that's probably not a winning set of laws, because even to have a thing on which you can operate laws requires that the species not be extinct.
But between sort of what's the distance between Chicago and New York that Wolfram Alpha can answer, and the question of if this person is good or not, there seems to be a lot of gray area. And that starts becoming really interesting. I think you're, since the creation of Wolfram Alpha, have been a kind of arbiter of truth at a large scale. So this system generates more truth than...
Try to make sure that the things are true. I mean, look, as a practical matter, when people write computational contracts, and it's kind of like, if this happens in the world, then do this.
Yes.
And this hasn't developed as quickly as it might have done. This has been a sort of a blockchain story in part and so on, although blockchain is not really necessary for the idea of computational contracts. But you can imagine that eventually sort of a large part of what's in the world are these giant chains and networks of computational contracts. And then something happens in the world, and this whole giant domino effect of contracts firing autonomously that cause other things to happen. And, for us, we've been the main sort of source, the oracle of quotes, facts or truth or something for things like blockchain, computational contracts and such like. And there's a question of, what, I consider that responsibility to actually get the stuff right. And one of the things that is tricky sometimes is, when is it true? When is it a fact? When is it not a fact?
Yes.
I think the best we can do is to say, we have a procedure, we follow the procedure, we might get it wrong, but at least we won't be corrupt about getting it wrong, so to speak.